If you have a Bible, we're going to be in the book of Exodus today. We're starting a series that we'll be in for some time. There's a scene in the book of Exodus where the leader of Egypt, his name's Pharaoh, decides, I'm sick of oppressing these Jewish people. I'm going to let them go. They can leave. I'm done with them. Y'all just go. And so they start to leave. They leave oppression. They leave slavery. They leave all the things that happened to them in Egypt under Pharaoh's leadership. They're leaving, and then as they start to go, Pharaoh changes his mind. He says, I actually don't want these people to leave. I don't want to give up this free workforce. I don't want them to go. And so it says that he looks and finds 600 chosen chariots, and then all the other chariots. And a chariot is like the pinnacle of military technology back in those days. And so he gets all the special chariots and then all the other ones, and then there's the Israelites, and they're running away, and they got nothing. They got nothing. It would be like a military force that has the ability to locate a downed pilot in the middle of a desert, hiding in the crevice of a rock using quantum magnetometry to figure out the electromagnetic pulse that his heart is putting off from an airplane that's miles in the sky, hypothetically speaking. And they're competing against an army that's got like bow and arrows. And if you have the ability from miles in the sky to find a heartbeat of a single individual and your opponents just have a bow and arrow, it's not a fair fight. If you have 600 choice chariots and then all the other chariots in the region and you're going after a group of people that have nothing, it's not a fair fight. And so Israel's leaving and they know what's behind them. It's the scene in every scary movie where the bad guy is chasing after the good person, and the good person gets in the car, and like the car won't turn on. Never works. Never works. The car never works. It's never Toyota. It's always an old broken down car. It's never the Toyota that always starts. It's not. And so they get in the car, and that's what Egypt and Israel is. They're like trying to leave, and the bad guy keeps getting closer and closer and closer, and they just want to leave it all behind. Israel just wants to leave it behind. I don't know if you've ever felt like that, and I don't know if you feel like that now, but I bet a lot of us have, where you're thinking, I just got to leave this behind. It's chased after me for a long time. It's chasing after me right now, and I just want it to be gone. This is part of being a human. It's part of being a Christ follower. The writer of Hebrews talks about leaving the weight and the sin that so easily entangles. Paul writes about how I don't have it all figured out, but one thing I do, I forget what's behind and I press on to what's forward. I don't know what you're trying to leave behind or what weight is holding you down, but I feel like the story of Exodus has something to say to you and to me. Because there are times that it feels like we're fighting a force that has all the power in the world. They have all the technological advances, and you've got a bow and arrow. And I don't care if you're Cam Hanes or Katniss Everdeen. You're not beating that army. And I don't care that only 3 of you got those references. I liked it. But you feel like you don't have what you need to overcome what you're trying to leave behind. The story of Exodus reminds us that you're not alone trying to leave it behind. That there is something that is pulling you along, that there is this infinite source of love that's behind you, helping you have your own Exodus. All right, so let's do the backstory. Okay, the backstory for the book of Exodus is the book of Genesis. God picks one family, Sarah and Abram, and becomes Sarah and Abraham. They're old, they have no kids, but God says, I'm going to use you to bless the whole world. And so they end up having a kid, and that kid has 2 kids, and one of those kids ends up with a bunch of kids, 12 kids. 2 wives, 2 concubines, 12 kids. It's a big family. And this guy's made some questionable choices as a person himself, so it's not surprising that as a dad, he has a favorite son. He gives him a coat of many colors. His name is Joseph. He gets the only coat of many colors. All the brothers around him like, hey, what about us? And then he makes it worse because he has this ability to read dreams and to interpret things, and like God speaks to him through dreams. And so he has dreams about how he is going to be the favorite over all of his older brothers. And so his older brothers are like, fine, okay, we're gonna sell you as a slave. Now, some of you are siblings right now and you're going, you know what? I thought I was bad to my little brother. It wasn't that bad probably. Joseph's brothers sell him as a slave. While he's a slave, he ends up going in prison. While he's in prison, he makes a friend, which is where all the best friends are made. And while he's in prison, he makes friends with the guy who's a butler for the king, who has a dream. And so Joseph interprets his dream. He did it at home and it made his brothers mad, but he does it in prison and helps someone out. And eventually this guy goes back to working for the king, the Pharaoh. And the Pharaoh has a dream that he himself can't figure out. And so the butler goes, hey, I met this guy in prison. He's awesome. And Pharaoh's like, yeah, bring your prison friend here. Pharaoh tells him his dream, and Joseph, by the power of God, interprets it. He saves the day. This Jewish boy who was sold as a slave went into prison, and eventually he saves the day, and Egypt, specifically Pharaoh, the leader of Egypt, is eternally grateful. This is what happens. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has shown you all this, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as you command. Only with regard to the throne will I be greater than you. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, see, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. Removing his signet ring from his hand, Pharaoh put it on Joseph's hand. He arrayed him in garments of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. He had him ride in the chariot of his second in command, and they cried out in front of him, bow the knee. Thus he set him over all the land of Egypt. This is a great start. Joseph, like quite a hero's journey, he's now the second most powerful person in all Egypt. And it started so good. A lot of things start good though, right? General Motors in the 1920s came up with this additive to add to fuel that made automobiles run faster, smoother. They performed so much better. Everyone loved it. And when it was first introduced in the 1920s, it was a magical transformation in the automotive industry. It was called leaded gasoline. It was so good. But it wasn't the only thing like that. Long before, like 4000 BC, the Scandinavians found this naturally occurring fibrous silicate minerals that made for amazing pottery. The Romans knew that this same thing could make these wicks that would enable them to have fires that would never go out. In the 8th century, a guy named Charlemagne said that he had this magical tablecloth that would never catch on fire. A couple hundred years later, a guy named Marco Polo discovered that there is this same material that created a fabric that would never catch on fire. And then in the 1800s, our friends over in Italy and Canada started to take this same naturally occurring silicate fibrous minerals and turn it into something that was used in industry all over the place. And it was magic. It was celebrated as an industrial success, and it was called asbestos. It was so great when it started. Joseph, he's 30 years old right here. He's 30 years old. Next slide. He was 30, and it was great. Do any of you have things that when you were 30, they were great? Like it worked for you when you were 30. If you're not 30 yet, like maybe when you're 13, okay? When I was 30, once a week, I would go order a pizza and I would eat the entire thing because every pizza is a personal pizza if you don't give up. And I would eat an entire pizza once a week, and I was so happy. And then something terrible happened. I got old. And now, I'm so embarrassed, but now when I go to Home Slice, I order a turkey sandwich and one slice of pizza, which is like the saddest part of my life. It's like I can't eat a pizza anymore. It worked for me at 30. Don't of you have things that are like a few levels more serious than that? That you started off doing and they worked for you. They were maybe magical at first. Maybe before you were 30, you realized that if you just always walked into a room and said, what is this person feeling? And what are they feeling? And what are they feeling? And if I could just tend to everything that everyone else is feeling, then people like me. And it worked for you. Or maybe you had this ability to go, I know what I need to do to make this person impressed with me. If I say these things and I talk this way, then this person is going to think I'm special. And so you learned how to become like a chameleon. And you step into this room and you become this person. And you step into that room and then you become that person. And it works for you when you're 30. Or maybe early on you realize that if you just never admitted that you were wrong, or you never admitted that you needed help, and people always thought you were impressive and you had everything together. And so you started just living in such a way that you always know what's right. I always have all the answers. I'm always in charge. I'm always in control. And you like that people respect you for that. And it works for you when you're 30. But at some point, we all go, wait a minute, this is going to not end well for me. Or maybe you don't figure it out the easy way. Because things change. When I was a few years older than 30, I was just trying to start writing books. And I had this first book that I really wanted to get out. And so I had someone helping me, and we were talking to different people about getting it published. And the person who was helping was like, yeah, we've got a couple options. Go with this one. Not the coolest one you want to go with, but go with this one because the person in charge here, they're going to be here a long time. And this one at the other one that you like, I don't think it's as stable. So go to this one because this person's going to be here for a long time. And I'm like, all right, boss, let's go here. And so I go to this one, I sign up, and then the person in charge, called an acquisition editor, emails me 2 weeks later and goes, hey, congrats, we're really excited to have you here. By the way, I'm retiring. I was like, oh, well, or maybe you've had something like that, where you moved to a certain part of the country or part of the city where no one is and it's quiet, there's not a lot of traffic, and it's just a calm, slow place of life. And then 15 years later, you're living in Liberty Hill, and you're like, why is everyone here? You know that feeling? Joseph goes to Egypt. He's second in charge. Israel follows him. The entire group of people are like, hey, our guy's number 2. Things are great. But eventually things change. Our text for today is from Exodus chapter 1. We're going to read it now. And so if you're physically able to stand, would you please stand for the reading of God's word? And if you're physically unable to stand, would you please stand in spirit as we read from Exodus chapter 1. Then Joseph died, and all his brothers and that whole generation. But the Israelites were fruitful and prolific. They multiplied and grew exceedingly strong, so that the land was filled with them. Now, a new king arose over Egypt who did not know Joseph. He said to his people, look, the Israelite people are more numerous and more powerful than we. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, or they will increase, and in the event of war, join our enemies and fight against us and escape from the land. The word of the Lord. Amen. Please be seated. What we see in our reading today is you have Joseph. Number 2, things are great. Pharaoh loves him. The king is happy. But then the king dies. And someone's new in charge who doesn't remember what Joseph did. You ever get a new boss and they don't remember all the Saturdays that you worked? and they don't remember all the overtime that you did, and they don't remember all the things that you did to hold the company together, Joseph knows what that's like. And eventually, what worked for you when you're 30 doesn't work anymore. February 2nd, 1923, General Motors in Dayton, Ohio introduces leaded gasoline. Everyone's happy. This is great. Cars are running smooth. And then we realize that leaded gasoline is bad for air, for land, and for children. And everyone's like, oh, we probably need to get rid of this. And so finally, in 2021, the very last country that allowed leaded gasoline, Algeria? How do you say that? That sounds right. We'll go with it. In 2021, the last country outlawed it because they realized this doesn't work. Asbestos, eventually people realized that the reason this thing was so good at keeping fires alive or fires not alive is the very thing that's going to make it bad for you to stay alive. And it increases the risk of cancer. Asbestos gets outlawed. There's a lot of things that we start with in life that work for us. Maybe at first they're magical. And this gets introduced to your life, and life is just better. Magically, things are better. But over time, it goes from magical and it becomes medicinal. And you have to just keep doing it just to function. And then finally, at the end, it just leaves you miserable. Magical, medicinal, miserable. A lot of the stuff that we need to leave behind probably started off as being magical. And then over time, it became just something you had to do every week or every day or every so often. And in the very end, it's just miserable. One of the things I know a lot of us need to leave behind is legalism, which really is magical at the beginning. You do this, you have the right answers, then you get the right results. That sort of legalistic understanding of how we relate to God, it has a magical component because it gives you this assurance that I have the right answers. If I do the right behavior, then I get the right results. It's magical at first, but in the end, you end up miserable. You end up like the older brother in Jesus' parable of the prodigal son. He's like, I believe the right things. I did the right things. I'm always at home. My scoundrel younger brother is out wasting everything. I've done the right things. I've said the right things. I'm at the right place, but he's miserable. And the father looks at him and says, I've been with you the entire time. You missed it. It started working for you, but in the end, it leaves you miserable. Or maybe you started off learning that if you always just cared about other people's feelings, they liked you, or if you performed the way that they wanted you to perform, then you would have friends, or if you appeared like you have all the answers, then everyone's going to trust you and follow you, but in the end, you're miserable because you stop being a human being. You stop just being a person, and instead you just became this caricature that everyone liked about you, and it wasn't even you. I read a story last week about this zoo in the Mountain West region of the country that was given a polar bear. And they're given this polar bear under the deal that they would make this beautiful enclosure for the polar bear. But at the time they got the polar bear, all they had was like a little cage for this polar bear. So it was like basically the size of 3 steps. And so you had this big polar bear that was stuck in this small little cage where you could just take 3 steps and then like turn around and then take like 3 more steps. That's all he could do for 3 years. And eventually, the enclosure for the polar bear was finally complete. It's got snow, it's got water, it's got a slide, it's got everything a polar bear could want. And they bring it to the enclosure after 3 years. They open the gate, they put him in there, and what does he do? He takes 3 steps forward and 3 steps back and doesn't go anywhere else. How many of us have lived like that? Where this worked for me when I was 30, when I was 13, and I take a few steps, and I come back, and it works. Paul will write, when I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child, but when I became an adult, I put away the former things. Some of us lived in Egypt for a long time, and things worked, but eventually a new Pharaoh shows up. It doesn't work anymore. and it's time to have an exodus. But sometimes you feel like you're trying to make your exodus, and all the stuff that you used to do that you're trying to leave behind is coming after you, and it's got all the chariots in the world, and you've just got a little bow and arrow. It's in these moments that we have to remember how the exodus starts. The story of the Exodus, God leading Israel out of Egyptian slavery, doesn't start with a massive miracle. There's not a group of people walking through a sea on dry land. That's not the beginning of the story. It's not a guy who gets a burning bush that talks to him. That's not the beginning of the story. It's not 10 plagues. It's not a staff turning into a snake. It's none of those things. The beginning of the book of Exodus is the way that you and I began as people. Like the very first thing just about every human being does when they're born is how the book of Exodus starts. The very first thing you probably did as soon as you were born, and yet over the years it's been pulled away from you and told, this isn't what you're supposed to do. You're an adult, you're a man, you're a woman, you can't do this. If you want a reason to do that, I'll give you a reason, but you're not supposed to do that. And yet that was the way you began, and the book of Exodus begins. It begins by people crying out. Exodus 2, scripture says this: after a long time, the king of Egypt died. The Israelites groaned under their slavery and cried out. Out of the slavery, their cry for help rose up to God. Walter Brueggemann says it this way. He says, the narrative begins with the cries of the slave. The cry from below is the beginning of the emancipatory process. The beginning of whatever you need to leave behind is being able to say, I need help. I can't manage this on my own. I am powerless to fix this. I need help. The first thing we did when we were born, most of us, is just to cry. Say, I need someone to help me. Like, life is pretty hard. And over the years, we've been taught over and over again, you're not supposed to ask for help. You're supposed to have all the answers. You know the right things to do. You know the right ways to act. You're fine. But the beginning of the emancipation process is by saying, I need help. It starts by crying out. But we don't always want to cry. It's about 5 years ago, and my mom had died a little while before, and I was at my gym, and I was at my jiu-jitsu gym, and I was training, and this piece of like poetry came into my mind, and I was like, why is this in my mind right now at like the least opportune time to have this in my mind? Let me read part of this. Through the drama, I can always depend on my mama. And when it seems that I'm hopeless, you say the words that can keep me back in focus. When I was sick as a little kid, to keep me happy, there's no limit to the things you did, and all my childhood memories are full of all the sweet things you did for me. Y'all remember that? That's Tupac Shakur's Dear Mama. A lot of you rap fans remember that song? Nope. A lot of white people here. My bad. Sorry. I'm in my gym, this Tupac song comes on, which I remember from my childhood, and I'm hearing this song about Dear Mama, and I'm like, this is the last place I want to start crying about my mom. Last place. How many of us live in places that are like the last place that we want to cry? The last place that we want to be vulnerable? How many of us men live in a world where we don't want to admit that we need help? We live in a weird world where masculinity has all these weird conversations about it. Where you're like, oh, it's bad to be a man, or you create this vacuum because it's bad to be a man, and then you have like this Andrew Tate phenomenon where you have these overgrown boys who are telling young men what it means to be a man, and all they're doing is acting like they're boys who are 35. A boy takes. A boy consumes. An adult creates and gives. A boy pretends like I don't want to cry. A boy pretends like I don't need help. A man, by Christian standards, is simply someone who's like Jesus. What's a man like? Jesus, that's the answer. It's not complicated. What does it mean to be a man? Jesus, that's the whole answer. Hey, what does it mean to be a man? Jesus. It's not that you can lift weights or you can shoot guns or you can build, it's Jesus. Jesus is the answer for what it means to be a man. Jesus is what it means to be a man. And what we know about Jesus is Jesus, in his darkest moments, was always willing to ask for help. Before he's crucified, he goes into the garden and says, I need my 3 closest friends with me where I'm going to go pray, God, take this away from me. I don't want to do this. I need God to help me, and I need my friends to help me. And then Jesus on the cross, what does he do in Matthew's gospel? Chapter 27, Matthew 27. About 3 o'clock, Jesus cried. What it means to be a person is that you're like Jesus. And I don't know what you need to leave behind. I don't know what you feel like is chasing you. But the emancipation process begins by crying out and saying, I need help. If Jesus could ask for help, then maybe you can too. Thomas Merton said that we are a living incompleteness. We are a gap. We are an emptiness that calls out for fulfillment. We all need help. And so what I'd like us to do over the next few weeks is to think about what do we need to leave behind. Because whatever we need to leave behind, it starts by saying, I need help. And one of the ways that we're going to start doing that is today we're going to have a prayer of the people exercise, where we have prayer of the people cards that are in the pew back in front of you. If not, you can find them, they're around. And I'd like you to take a second and write down what you need to leave behind. Maybe for you it's something that used to be helpful when you were 30 or 13. Or maybe it's something that's never been helpful for you. But as a way of us as a church collectively crying out and saying, I need help, we're going to write these down and say, this is what I need to leave behind. And then later in service, one of our elders, Mike Benaglio, is going to lead us in a corporate prayer over these cards. And part of the power of these cards is maybe your card will be read out this morning, or maybe it'll simply be read over by the elders and ministers later in this month. But part of what these cards do, they're a declaration to the people around you to say, I'm not the only one trying to leave something behind. I'm not the only one who needs help. And the power of you being able to say that I need help is that you empower other people to feel like there's nothing wrong with you just because you need help. We all need help. We all, like Jesus, cry out, because that's what it means to be a human. And what it means for God to be God is that God is the one who hears. The reason we cry is that we trust that God listens. Let's go back to Exodus for a second. In Exodus 2, right here, the Israelites groaned under their slavery and cried out. Out of the slavery, their cry for help rose up to God. God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God looked upon the Israelites, and God took notice of them. God hears your cries, and God cares for your cries. So as you're trying to leave behind, the reason you can cry out is because you know that God hears you, and God cares about you, and God notices you. Let's pray.